You already know him. You've seen him in the mirror. Not always, not every day, but in the moments when you chose the easier thing, the safer opinion, the quieter version of yourself, the thing you didn't say because you weren't sure how it would land, that was him. He has your face. He uses your voice. He makes very reasonable decisions. He is not dramatic about it. He doesn't announce himself. He just appears quietly in the space between what you almost did and what you actually did, and then he disappears again before you can look directly at him. Nietzsche saw him coming. In 1883, he looked at the direction civilization was moving, toward comfort, toward optimization, toward the removal of all friction, and he described with terrifying precision the person that system would produce. He called him the last man, not the worst man, not the evil man, the last one, the end of the line, the final form of a species that optimized until it optimized away everything that made it worth optimizing. He blinks. That word, blinks, is doing everything. Not the monster at the end of history, the comfortable one, the one who looks at the abyss and blinks. We are not going to describe the last man from a safe distance, but we're not going to push you into him either. Not yet. You've seen him before. Not clearly, not directly. In the corner of a thought you didn't finish. In the choice you made that you didn't quite look at on the way out. In the moment you realized you'd been scrolling for 20 minutes and couldn't remember a single thing you'd seen. In the conversation where you said what the room wanted to hear and felt afterward, a small specific emptiness you couldn't name. That emptiness has a name. He lives close. That's all we're saying for now. He lives very close. The happiness you didn't choose. Part 1, the blink. The last man has discovered happiness. That is the first thing Nietzsche says about him. Not that he is evil, not that he is stupid. He has discovered happiness. The small kind. The kind that comes pre-packaged with a subscription, a fee that knows what you want to see before you know you want to see it. He blinks. That word, blinks, is doing everything. It's not sleep. It's not death. It's the specific expression of someone who has looked at the depth of things and chosen consciously not to go there. The blink is a decision. You've made it today, probably more than once. Nietzsche's last man doesn't suffer. That's the point. That's what makes him the end point, and not just a bad day. He has eliminated the conditions for suffering, and in doing so, he has eliminated the conditions for everything else. For the kind of love that costs something, for the kind of work that breaks you open, for the kind of thought that you can't walk back from. He is warm, he is fed, he is entertained, he is connected to hundreds of people he will never have a real conversation with. He has opinions, carefully calibrated opinions that will not cost him a single relationship. He has passions, small ones, safe ones, the kind you can put down when they become inconvenient, and he blinks. That nod, part 2, the nod. You're watching this video, and somewhere in the last few minutes, you've been nodding, not physically, the internal nod. The one that says, yes, I see this. I recognize this. I understand what's being described here. That nod feels like clarity. It feels like the opposite of being the last man. It feels like you're the one who can see the problem while everyone else is inside it. Here is what Nietzsche would say to that. The nod is the problem. Understanding the last man is not the same as escaping him. Recognizing the cage is not the same as leaving it. Seeing it clearly doesn't mean you've left it. It means you're comfortable enough to look. Let's be precise about what the nod costs you. Every time you understood something and didn't act on it, that's a nod. Every time you saw a version of yourself you didn't want to be and filed it away under, "I'll work on that," that's a nod. Every time you had a thought that would have required real courage to say out loud and instead turned it into something you'd share to see how it landed, that's a nod. Every time you chose the opinion that would cause the least friction in the room you were in, that's a nod. You are very good at nodding. You've been practicing. And here's the part that is hardest to hear. The nodding feels like thinking. It has the texture of awareness. It gives you the sensation of depth without requiring you to go anywhere near it. That nod, that is the last man. Nietzsche described the last man giving a speech about the Overman, the human who overcomes, who creates, who says yes to the full weight of existence. And the crowd cheered, not for the Overman, for the last man. They said, "Give us the last man. We have found happiness." They were already inside it. They couldn't see the walls because the walls were warm. This is the part that matters most. The last man doesn't feel like a trap. He feels like an arrival. He feels like the place you've been trying to get to. Finally warm enough, finally comfortable enough, finally free from the friction that used to make you feel alive. The cage doesn't announce itself. It just gets quieter. The wanting gets smaller. The risks get fewer. The version of yourself that used to want more stops showing up. And you call it peace. It isn't peace. It's the absence of the question. And the absence of the question is the most dangerous thing Nietzsche could imagine. The version of you that already won. Part 3, The Mirror. The last man doesn't arrive suddenly. He is built slowly, through a long series of individually reasonable decisions. The time you didn't say the honest thing because the timing wasn't right. The ambition you scaled back because it seemed arrogant to want that much. The discomfort you avoided because you'd deal with it later. And later became a habit, and the habit became a personality. He didn't take over. You handed it to him, piece by piece, quietly, in moments so small they didn't feel like choices. But they were choices, every single one. Here's the X-ray. Look at the last week of your life, not the version you described to someone, the actual one. How many times did you have a thought you considered worth saying and didn't say it? How many times did you open something that would have challenged you and closed it in favor of something that wouldn't? How many times did you feel the pull towards something harder, something realer, something that would have cost you the comfort of being liked, and chose the comfort? That is your percentage, the ratio of last man to something else. And the ratio is not fixed. It moves every day in the direction of whichever one you feed. He already won today. You felt it. The last man is not your enemy. He is the path of least resistance inside you. He is the version of you that has learned very efficiently how to survive without risking anything that matters. He is very good at his job, and his job is not to destroy you. His job is much subtler than that. His job is to make the smaller choice feel like the reasonable one, to make staying silent feel like wisdom, to make the scaled-back ambition feel like maturity, to make the version of yourself that asks for less feel like the version that has finally grown up. He has been doing this for years. You've been praising him for it. The people who love you have been praising him for it. They call it being grounded. They call it realistic. They call it knowing yourself. They mean you stop making them uncomfortable. The question is not whether he exists. He exists in everyone. The question is whether you are going to let him keep running things, or whether you still remember what it felt like before he did. You thought of someone else. At some point in this video, a specific person came to mind. Someone this explains. Someone who should watch this. You always do, immediately. That thought, the one where you're watching and nodding and thinking of them, that is the nod. That is the last man using your intelligence as a way to avoid your honesty. The mirror is not for them. It was always for you. The last man wins by default. He doesn't need to fight. He doesn't need to argue. He just needs you to keep choosing the version of yourself that requires less. Less courage, less honesty, less of the friction that used to tell you you were still moving. And he is patient. He has all the time in the world. Because time for the last man is not something you move through. It's something that passes while you are comfortable. The alternative is not comfort. The alternative is not guaranteed. The alternative will cost you the specific warmth of knowing exactly what to expect from yourself. But it's the only direction where something real is still possible. Not here, not now, out there, where it costs something. He already won. You just didn't want to know. You already know the feeling. Not sadness, not loneliness exactly. Something more specific than that. The feeling of being in the middle of a conversation and realizing that what you're saying is not what you mean. That the words coming out of your mouth are correct, appropriate, completely fine, and completely not you. You've had this feeling more times than you've counted, in big rooms and small ones, with people you love and people you barely know. The location doesn't matter. The feeling is the same. The slight pressure of performing a version of yourself that fits the moment but doesn't quite fit you. You felt it in other places too. Laughing at the right moment, agreeing with something you didn't quite agree with, performing enthusiasm for something that left you cold. Not lying exactly. Something subtler than lying. The version of yourself you send into the room while the real one waits somewhere else. You know the one that watches, the one that is always slightly behind glass. It has been behind glass for a long time, long enough that you've stopped noticing the temperature difference between the two sides. We are not going to tell you the glass wall is a problem. You already know it's there. You've known for a long time. What we're going to do is something more uncomfortable. We're going to ask why you keep it clean. Because the glass didn't appear. You didn't wake up one day and find yourself separated from everything. It was built, carefully, over a long time, with very good reasons. And the reasons are the most important part, not the wall, the reasons. Because the reasons are the only things standing between you and what's on the other side. The thing you can't name. Part 1. The feeling. There is a specific moment most people have had and almost no one talks about. You're in a conversation. Could be anyone. A friend, a colleague, someone you've known for years. And somewhere in the middle of it, you notice something. Not what they're saying, the gap between what they're saying and what's actually happening. The way the words are filling the space without touching anything real. The way everyone in the room is performing a version of ease that no one actually feels. And you realize you have been doing it too. You have been doing it for so long, you forgot you were doing it. That moment of noticing, the specific vertigo of it, that is where you notice yourself. The feeling has a texture. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's closer to a frequency, something slightly off in a room that looks completely normal. You felt it when everyone was laughing and you were laughing too, and something in you was watching the laughing from a distance and thinking, is this it? Is this what this is supposed to feel like? You felt it scrolling, the specific blankness of consuming content that was designed to make you feel something and didn't, the 20 minutes you can't account for, the faint hunger afterward for something you can't name. The feeling doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means the system is working exactly as intended. You're just not the one who intended it. No one told you to act. Part 2. The theater. You learn very early that the world responds better to a certain version of you. Not the whole one, the edited one, the one that knows which parts to lead with and which parts to keep somewhere quieter. You didn't decide this consciously, you observed it. The way a scientist observes a system, except you are also the experiment. This response gets warmth, that one gets distance. This version of me fits here, that version doesn't, and slowly, without any single moment you could point to, the performance became the first thing you reach for. Not because you are false, because you are very good at reading a room. No one told you to act, you learned it. Watch how quickly that lands. Watch what happens in your chest when you really let it in. No one forced you into the performance. No one handed you a script. You wrote it yourself from observation, from the evidence of what worked and what didn't, from years of careful adjustment until the performance felt indistinguishable from the person. The theater didn't trap you, you built the stage, and then you chose not to leave it. The question is not whether the theater is real, it is. Every social structure is a theater. Every conversation has staging. This is not the problem. The problem is when you forget you're the one holding the script. When the performance becomes the only version of you that gets to show up. When the real one, the one that was there before you learned what the room wanted, starts waiting longer and longer between appearances, until one day you realize you can't quite remember what it wanted. The moment you almost touched it. Part 3, the glass. There have been moments. You know which ones. The conversation that went somewhere real before one of you pulled it back. The person you met who seemed to see the version of you that doesn't usually get out. And you felt for a moment the glass thinning. The night something cracked open and you said something true and the room held it and you thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. You remember the weight of those moments, not because they were dramatic, because they were different. The air was different. The silence between sentences was different. You were slightly more tired afterward in the way you're tired after something that cost something. These moments exist. They are not fantasies. They happen. And then something happened after them. You pulled back, not dramatically, not with a reason you could name, but something in you assessed the situation and decided, too much, too open, too exposed to whatever comes next when you let someone see the version that doesn't perform. So you made a small adjustment, changed the subject, softened the thing you said, added a joke to the edge of the honest moment to make it easier to step away from. And the other person adjusted too, because that's what people do. They follow the temperature of the room, and the room cooled, and the glass came back, and you told yourself it was the right call, and a part of you knew, not clearly, but enough, because the reasons were real, the reasons were reasonable, the reasons were always there when you needed them, and you needed them because you already knew what you were choosing. And you chose it anyway. This is the part no one wants to look at, not the wall, the maintenance. The glass doesn't stay clean on its own. It requires attention, a regular, quiet, almost unconscious effort to keep things at the right temperature, to stop conversations before they go too far, to redirect the ones that start moving towards something real, to perform just enough warmth that no one notices the distance. You are very good at this. You have been doing it for years, and here is what makes it complicated. The maintenance doesn't feel like maintenance. It feels like social intelligence. It feels like maturity. It feels like knowing when to push and when to hold back. It feels like the wisdom of someone who has learned how things work. Every time you cool a room that was starting to warm, you tell yourself you're being sensible, protecting the relationship, choosing the right moment. And every time there is a reason, a good one, a reasonable one. That's what the glass is made of. Reasonable reasons to stay exactly where you are. The feeling you had at the beginning, the one that said something is off, that wasn't a malfunction. That was the part of you that remembers what it felt like before the glass was there, before you learned what the room wanted, before the performance became the first thing you reached for, before the reasons became automatic. It's still there, underneath everything. The part that wanted to say the true thing, the part that leaned forward in the moment before you pulled back, the part that felt the warmth on the other side and knew it was real and stayed anyway, just a second longer than was safe. That part hasn't gone anywhere. It just waits in the space between what you almost said and what you actually said. It's been waiting there for a long time. It's still waiting now. The glass is not the problem. You're not incapable of connection. You've been choosing the distance. You've done it before. The moment that has started moving towards something real, the warmth on the other side of the glass that you could feel through it. You know what that costs. You know why you step back. The question is not whether you can do it. The question is whether you're going to keep the glass clean or let it get a little dirty. Not here, not now. Out there, in the next moment that starts moving towards something real. You've always known. You just kept the glass clean. There was a moment. You opened something you used to love, a song, a place, a conversation with someone who knew you before, and you waited for yourself to arrive, and you didn't. Something had shifted, not loudly, not with any announcement, just a quiet reorganization of how things looked, and the slow realization that the way they looked before was not available anymore. You didn't choose it. You didn't ask for it. It just happened. And then it was done. Nietzsche called it the descent. Zarathustra leaving the mountain, not falling, not being pushed, choosing to go down because something in him could no longer stay up, because you can't unknow what you know, because once you've seen a certain thing clearly, you can't choose to see it less clearly. The clarity doesn't ask whether you're ready. It doesn't check whether this is a convenient time. It simply arrives. And the arriving changes what was available before it. The descent isn't a failure. It's what happens after the moment when something becomes visible that can't be made invisible again. That moment happened to Zarathustra. It happened to you too. You know which one it was. We are not going to tell you what you saw. You already know. What we're going to do is name the specific feeling that came after, not the insight, the aftermath, the part where life continued as scheduled, where you showed up to the same places, had the same conversations, went through the same motions, and something underneath all of it had quietly changed its shape. The part where you went back to the places you used to be and found that something was different now. not the places. You. The thing you can't unsee. Part 1, the moment. Every descent begins with a moment of clarity. Not happiness, not relief, just clarity. The kind that comes when something you've been half knowing finally becomes fully known. When the thing you've been keeping just out of direct sight, because keeping it out of direct sight was easier, moves into the center of your vision and stays there. You didn't go looking for it. Most people don't. The conditions were just right. A quiet moment, a space in the noise, something someone said that opened a door you hadn't noticed was closed, and it found the moment when you were quiet enough to see it. And now you have. And the world looks exactly the same as before. That's the strange part. Nothing changed, except the thing you're carrying. Here's the thing about clarity. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't check whether you're ready. It doesn't offer you the option of seeing something and then choosing not to have seen it. Once the shape of a thing is visible, it remains visible. You can look away. You can fill your time with things that make it harder to look. You can build entire structures of distraction designed to keep the peripheral from becoming the central. But the thing remains, in the corner of every other thought, in the quiet that comes when the distraction stops, waiting. Not patiently, just waiting, because it has nowhere else to go. It lives in you now. You can't unsee it. You already know you can't. The place is still there. Part 2, the coat. You went back. Of course you went back. That's what people do after a moment like that. They go back to the familiar things, the places that knew them before. You open something you used to love, a piece of music, a conversation with someone you've known for years, a place you've returned to 100 times, and you waited for the feeling, the specific feeling those things used to produce, the warmth, the recognition, the sense of being exactly where you belonged. You waited, and something was different. Not wrong exactly. The thing was still there. The music still played. The person still said the things they always said, but the part of you that used to be met by those things, that used to be completed by them, was somewhere else now, or had grown past the place where those things could reach it. The strange thing wasn't that the room changed. The room was exactly the same. The music was exactly the same. The conversation landed in exactly the same places. The street looked the same. The coffee tasted the same. Everything was exactly the same. And something was gone. Not from the room, from you. The part of you that used to receive those things, that used to be fed by them, completed by them, returned to itself by them, that part had moved somewhere else, or grown into something that those things no longer fit. The room didn't know what to do with you, because the version of you the room was built for was no longer the version standing in the doorway. This is the specific grief of the descent, not the loss of something outside you, the loss of a version of yourself that could still be returned to. You can go back to the place. The place will be there. The music will play. The people will say the same things in the same way. You can walk through all of it. You can do it exactly right. And you will feel underneath all of it the low hum of a distance that wasn't there before. Not sadness exactly. Not nostalgia exactly. The specific feeling of wearing a coat that used to fit and noticing for the first time that it doesn't anymore, and understanding that the coat didn't change. You stood there for a moment with the coat in your hands, trying to remember what it felt like to be the person it was made for. and the memory was there, but you weren't inside it anymore. You were standing next to it, looking at it, the way you look at something that used to be yours. Not the end, the next place. Part 3, the valley. Zarathustra went down, not because the mountain failed him, not because something went wrong, because the kind of thing he had become required a different place. The descent wasn't a punishment, it wasn't a crisis, it was the next thing. The valley isn't better than the mountain. It's not warmer, it's not easier. It doesn't offer what the mountain offered. It offers something else, something you couldn't have seen without coming down. Not a reward for the descent, not a consolation, just the view from here, which is different from the view from there, because you are standing somewhere different now. The descent is not reversible. This is not a tragedy. It's a description. The person you were before the moment of clarity had access to things the current version doesn't. Certain comforts, certain silences, certain ways of being in a room that are no longer available. The current version sees things the previous one never had to see. Not better, not worse, just visible now. And visibility, once it arrives, doesn't offer to leave. You can look away from what you see, but the seeing has already happened. It lives in the space between your attention and the thing you're attending to. The question is not how to get back to the previous one. The question is what to do with the sight you have now. The valley is not the destination. Nothing is the destination. That's what the descent teaches if you let it, that the movement is the point, not the arriving, not the returning. The willingness to keep going through the place that doesn't feel like home yet, because yet is the operative word, not because it will become home, because the person you're becoming might be someone who doesn't need it to. Someone who has learned to move through unfamiliar terrain without waiting for it to feel familiar first. That's not comfort, but it's something. It's the specific capacity of a person who came down from the mountain and kept walking. You didn't ask for the moment, nobody does, but you had it. And the having of it changed what was available to you. Not the world, you. The places are still there. The people are still there. The music is still there. And you are still there too. Just not in the same way, not smaller, not larger, different. The specific difference of someone who has seen something that reorganized the interior without asking permission. The old arrangement never returned. It's the shape you have now, not a wound, not a gift. A shape, the one you carry into every room from here. The descent doesn't end at the bottom. It ends when you stop looking for the way back up to where you were. Not because the mountain is gone, because the person who needed to be there isn't who you are now. And the person you are now is still in the middle of something, still in the valley, still in the unfamiliar. That is not a problem to be solved. It is a position to be inhabited, not here, not in a video. In the next moment, you reach for the old thing and feel the distance. Stay in it. There isn't a way back anyway. You can't go back. The place is still there. The version of you isn't. You already have an image. When you hear the word Overman, Übermensch, something appears, strong, certain, untouchable, the person who has it figured out, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who walks into any room and doesn't need it to go a certain way. Hold that image for a moment. Notice how specific it is. Notice how quickly it arrived. Notice that it looks nothing like you, and that you already knew that before I said it. We're going to take it apart. Nietzsche didn't create the Overman as a destination. He created it as a direction, a pressure, a question aimed at the present moment. Not, are you there yet? But, which way are you facing? Most people hear Overman and immediately begin measuring. Am I close? Am I far? Am I the type of person who could become that? The measuring is the cage. The measuring never ends, and it was never going to tell you anything real. We are not going to tell you how to become the Overman. We're going to do something more specific than that. We're going to look at the structure of your attention, where it goes when you're about to say something, where it goes when you're deciding whether to act, where it goes in the silence after someone sees you. Because the Overman isn't a person, it's what's left when you stop performing for an audience that only exists in your head. And it turns out that audience is in the room with you right now. It has been for a very long time. The version that doesn't exist. Part 1. The misunderstanding. The Overman you're imagining doesn't exist. Not because Nietzsche was wrong, because the image itself is the thing Nietzsche was arguing against. The perfectly composed person, the one who never doubts, the one who has transcended the messy, uncomfortable, unoptimizable parts of being human. That's not the Overman. That's the last man with better posture. The last man wants certainty, wants the cage to be comfortable, wants to arrive somewhere safe and stop moving. The Overman is something else entirely, something much less cinematic, something you won't find on a motivational account. The Overman isn't the person at the top of the mountain. The Overman is the one who stopped needing the mountain to mean something to someone else. Nietzsche said, "Man is something that must be overcome, not other people, not your circumstances, not the world. Man, the version of man that measures itself by what other people think of it. The version that needs the approval of the crowd to feel real. The version that performs its own life for an audience it invented. That is what must be overcome, not through force, not through willpower, not through becoming a harder, colder version of what you already are, through a different relationship with the need for approval. That's it. That's the whole thing. And it sounds simple until you try to go 1 hour without consulting the crowd, until you try to say something true without first checking whether it's the kind of true that will be well received. Then you understand why Nietzsche called it an overcoming. You don't speak anymore. Part 2, the approval. Think about the last thing you posted, not the content, the moment before, the specific calculation that happened in the 2 seconds before you press send. Who's going to see this? How it's going to land? Whether this version of the thought is the right version, the one that sounds like you, but also sounds like the version of you that other people can handle. You didn't post a thought, you posted a preview. You don't speak anymore. You preview yourself. The Overman is the one who has stopped previewing. Not because they don't care about people, not because they've become indifferent, because they've found something more real than the preview. The actual thought, the unedited version, the one that existed before the crowd got to it. This is not about social media. Social media just made it visible. You've been doing this your whole life, adjusting the story you tell based on who's in the room, managing the temperature of yourself, deciding which version of an opinion is safe enough to say out loud. The audience changes, the performance continues, and here's what that costs. You stop knowing what you actually think until you've already consulted the imaginary crowd. The thought arrives, and before it can be yours, you run it through everyone who might hear it. And it comes out the other side slightly different, slightly safer, slightly less you, every time. for years, until the version of you that existed before the consultation, the first version, the unedited one, is so rarely present that you've stopped noticing it's gone. Nietzsche called this slave morality, not an insult, a description. The morality of people who define themselves by how they're seen, who measure their value by the crowd's reaction, who need external permission to feel legitimate. The slave doesn't have chains. The slave has an audience, and the audience is always watching, even when the room is empty, even when no one will ever know. Even in the decisions you make completely alone, you check. You check what the crowd would think. The crowd you invented, the crowd that doesn't exist, the crowd you've been performing for your entire life. They have opinions about everything you do. They are never satisfied. They move the line every time you reach it, and they don't exist. The moment the crowd goes quiet. Part 3, the direction. Here is what no one tells you about stepping out of the performance. It's not freedom. Not at first. It's silence. The specific silence of a room where the audience has just left. You say the honest thing. You make the choice that doesn't optimize for approval. You stop previewing and just speak, and then nothing happens. No validation, no feedback, no signal from the crowd that you got it right. Just the thing you did, and you, and the quiet. That quiet feels wrong. It has the texture of failure, of having said too much, gone too far, been too unmanaged. The instinct is to fill it, to add something, to soften the edges of the honest moment until it's acceptable again. Most people walk back into the performance at exactly this point. The silence feels like failure. It feels like no one is watching because no one cares. It feels like you did it wrong. Too honest, too direct, too much of the version that doesn't edit itself. So you soften, you add the joke, you walk it back, and the crowd returns. And it feels like warmth, but it isn't warmth. It's the performance resuming. And the relief you feel is the relief of someone who almost left the stage and didn't. You know this relief. You felt it dozens of times. The slightly sick feeling that comes after you almost said something real and caught yourself in time. The gratitude that no one saw. The safety of the retreat. That feeling is the cage closing. And it feels like relief because the cage is familiar. And familiar for most people is close enough to safe. The Overman is not the one who never feels the silence. The Overman is the one who learned to stay in it. Not because it gets comfortable, it doesn't. Not because the need for approval disappears, it doesn't. But because something else becomes possible in the silence. Something that can't happen while you're performing. The thought that is only yours. The choice that doesn't require anyone else to confirm it. The version of yourself that exists when no one is watching and is still worth being. That version has been there the whole time, waiting in the silence you kept filling. Nietzsche didn't say, become the Overman. He said, man is something that must be overcome. The verb is ongoing. The direction is the point, not the arrival. Every time you say the true thing before you've checked it with the crowd, that's a moment of it. Every time you make a choice in the silence, without waiting for the signal, that's a moment of it. Every time you stay in the discomfort of not being seen long enough to do it anyway, that's a moment of it. Not a transformation, not an achievement, a direction chosen again, every day. In the small moments no one will ever see, especially those, because the crowd isn't watching, and you do it anyway. The crowd is still there. It doesn't go away. The habit of consulting it, the reflex of previewing yourself, doesn't disappear because you noticed it, but noticing is where it starts. Not here, not in a video. In the next moment, you have a thought and feel the pull to check it with the crowd first. That moment, that pause between the thought and the preview, that's where you choose. Not once, every time. The direction isn't a decision you make, it's a decision you keep making in the small moments, in the quiet ones, in the ones where the crowd would never know the difference, especially those. Not a destination, just the moment you stop asking the crowd who you are. Something has already happened. You've been through something, maybe a long time ago, maybe recently, that changed what was available to you, what you could go back to, what you could still become. And somewhere in the middle of all that, a question arrived. Not loudly, not as a question exactly, more like a weight shifting, the way a load adjusts when you've been carrying it so long that even its movement feels unfamiliar. If the old version is gone, what remains? Nietzsche had an answer. Not a comfortable one, not a straight line from loss to recovery. He described 3 changes, 3 things the spirit must become before it can create. The camel, the lion, the child. Not a sequence you complete, a movement you're already inside. You've been carrying the camel's load your whole life. Some of it you chose, most of it you didn't. This is about the part you didn't. We are not going to walk you through a transformation. Transformation is not what this is. What we're going to do is look at the weight, the specific weight you've been carrying since before you were old enough to decide whether to carry it, and then the moment you put it down, and then the silence after, and then the thing that was there before the weight arrived, and has been there ever since, not waiting to be rescued, not diminished by the time it spent under everything else, still doing exactly what it does, still there, waiting for exactly this. The weight you inherited, Part 1, the camel. The camel kneels. It doesn't resist. It doesn't evaluate the load. It simply lowers itself and accepts the weight because that is what it was built to do. You know this feeling, the version of success that was already decided before you were old enough to decide. The way of being in the world that was handed to you so early that it felt like your own idea. The expectations that arrived before you had expectations of your own. You carried them efficiently, without complaint. Because that's what you do when a load arrives early enough. You forget it arrived at all. You think it grew there. You think it's you. And for a long time, the distinction didn't matter. The load was manageable. The load felt like direction until the ground shifted and the load kept its shape, and you started to wonder which parts were load and which parts were you. Here is the question nobody asks until something forces them to. Which parts of this did I choose? Not in theory, specifically. The ambition, yours or inherited. The definition of a good life, yours or borrowed. The version of yourself you present to people who matter, built from your own material or assembled from what the room required. Most people never ask. Not because they're incurious, because the load arrives so early that asking feels like questioning the ground beneath your feet. And the ground was stable. For a long time, the ground was stable. The load was manageable. The direction was clear. But the ground shifted. You already know it shifted. That's why you're here. And now the load feels different. Not heavier, just less obviously yours. Just slightly less like something you chose, and slightly more like something that was there when you arrived. Not yet. Part 2, the lion. The lion doesn't carry the load. The lion says no, not gently, not with explanation, not with the careful social management of someone who needs the room to stay warm. The lion encounters the great dragon, the dragon whose scales are made of every law you didn't write but have been obeying, every value you inherited but never tested, every thou shalt that arrived before you had a self to shout with. And the lion says, I will not. You felt this. The moment Ano arrived in you that wasn't polite, that didn't apologize, that simply refused. But here is what Nietzsche says next, and this is the part that most readings miss. The lion cannot create. It can destroy what was false. It can refuse what was inherited. It can clear the ground, but it cannot build, because the lion's power is the power of no. And creation requires something else entirely, something the lion, by its very nature, cannot provide. After the refusal comes the silence, the specific silence of someone who has just said no to the thing they've been saying yes to for most of their life, and there is nothing yet to replace it with. Just the open space where the load used to be. That space is not a failure. It's not emptiness in the negative sense. It's the condition, the only condition under which the next thing can arrive. Most people cannot stay in that silence. It feels like failure, like the no was wrong, like maybe the load was yours after all, and you were foolish to put it down. So they pick it back up, or find a new load that looks different but weighs the same, a new version of the same expectation, a new crowd to perform for, a new definition of success that still belongs to someone else. The lion's work is not comfortable. It was never meant to be. The silence after the refusal is not the absence of something. It's the condition for what comes next. But you have to stay in it long enough for the next thing to arrive. And the next thing doesn't arrive on schedule. It arrives when the space is ready, when you've stopped trying to fill it with something familiar. Not behind you, ahead. Part 3, the child. The child is not who you were. This is the misreading. The child is not the version of you before the weight arrived, not innocence, not naivety, not the self before it knew things. The child is a capacity, the capacity to begin, to create without permission, to say yes to something because the yes comes from inside rather than from the crowd. The child plays. Not because play is trivial, because play is the only activity where the doing is the point, not the outcome, not the approval, not the result, the motion itself. Nietzsche called it a holy yes saying, not the yes of compliance, not the yes of someone who has been asked and finds it easier to agree. The yes that comes before the question, the yes that moves without consulting the crowd. This is not the same as confidence. Confidence still cares whether it's right. This is something older. The part of you that drew on walls before you knew that walls were for other things, that sang before you knew singing was something people judged, that wanted things directly before you learned to want what you were supposed to want. That part didn't leave. It went quiet, under the weight, under the performance, under the distance you kept between yourself and everything that might have reached you, but it didn't leave. Quiet is not the same as gone. The child was never behind you. You've been thinking of it as something in the past, something you had before the weight arrived, before the performance began, before the glass went up. But the child is not a memory. The child is the thing that was there before the weight and is still there underneath it, not waiting to be rescued, not damaged, not diminished, still doing exactly what it does, saying yes, creating, moving toward things because they matter, not because they will be received well. You've felt it in the moments when you forgot to perform, in the work that surprised you, in the yes that came before you could stop it, in the conversation that went somewhere you didn't plan, in the idea that arrived before you had time to ask whether it was good enough. That was the child. It never went anywhere. It just had less room. The camel carried what was given. The lion refused what was false. The child creates what is next. These are not stages you complete and leave behind. They are all present, right now, in you. The camel is the weight you're still carrying that isn't yours. The lion is every refusal that changed your direction. The child is the yes that's been waiting in the silence after the no. The question is not which one you are. The question is which one you're listening to. You've been through the descent. You've stopped performing for the crowd. You've felt the silence after putting down what wasn't yours. The child was there through all of it. Not as a destination, not as a reward, not as evidence that you did it right. As the thing that remained when everything else was examined, refused, or released. It was there in the glass wall, in the moment before you pulled back. It was there in the descent, in the version of you standing outside the familiar room. It was there in the silence after the lion's refusal, waiting for the space to clear. It doesn't ask you to find it. It's already where you left it, which is the same place it's always been, underneath everything, doing exactly what it does. The child is still there. You already know where. You're already in it. This didn't start here. It started the last time you caught yourself thinking about a moment you can't get back. A decision, a person, a version of yourself that is gone now and isn't coming back. You know the one. You don't need to name it. It named itself the moment I said it. That feeling and the one that just moved in your chest, that is what we're here for. Not a lecture, not a summary. That Nietzsche had a name for this. Not the nostalgia, not the regret, something heavier than both. He called it the heaviest thought. The thought that, once it lands, you cannot put down. You've been carrying it without knowing what it was called. Most people spend their whole lives that way, carrying something they refuse to look at directly. Because the moment you look at it, really look, it looks back. And it doesn't blink. This is that moment. You've been here before. You'll be here again. The only question is what you do while you're here. We are not going to explain eternal return. You don't need an explanation. You need to feel the full weight of the question that has been waiting at the back of your mind since you were old enough to know that some things don't come back. You're already in it. You've been in it for years. Every time you've reached for distraction, the phone, the noise, the next thing, you were answering it. Every time you've chosen the version of yourself that requires less courage, you were answering it. You just never let yourself finish the thought. We're going to finish it now. You already know you can't. The Weight Arrives, Part 1, The Wheel. Close your eyes, not now, later. When you're alone and it's quiet enough for the real thoughts to surface, the wheel is already turning. It has passed over your life 1 billion times already. Every choice you've made, every choice you didn't, every morning you woke up and decided to be a slightly smaller version of yourself, Every night you fell asleep telling yourself tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow was the same. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't stop for grief. It doesn't make exceptions for the moments you'd rather forget. It turns, and it will keep turning. The only question is whether you're ready to say yes to the turning. Nietzsche didn't invent this idea to inspire you. He invented it to break you open. He called it the heaviest thought. Not because it is complicated, because once you feel it, really feel it, you cannot unfeel it. Most people put it back down. They find something to do, something to watch, something to want, something small enough to fill the space where the thought was. You've done this. Every time you've reached for the phone in the first quiet moment of the day, that was you putting the thought back down. Every time you've turned the volume up just slightly more than necessary, that was you. The thought waited. It is very patient. It has nowhere else to be. Once more, part 2, the loop. Imagine every mistake you've made, not the ones you've forgiven yourself for, the others, the ones you return to at 3 a.m. when there's nothing left to distract you. The thing you said that you can never unsay. The moment you chose yourself when you should have chosen someone else. The version of you that showed up when it mattered most and was not enough. Now imagine you have to make them again, all of them, exactly as you made them. Because you are exactly the person who would make them. Not a worse version of you, not a version caught off guard. You, this you, the one watching this right now, again and again, forever. Every escape route you've built leads back to the same room. The future version of yourself who will finally have it together. He doesn't come. You've been waiting for him your whole life, and he keeps not arriving. The next relationship, the next job, the next city. They're all the same room, different furniture, same room. You already know this. You've known it every time you arrived somewhere new and felt, within weeks, the familiar weight return. You just kept moving because movement feels like progress. It isn't. It's just the wheel with better scenery. The eternal return is not about time, it is about weight. Can you carry the weight of your own life with enough love to want it back? You already answered. The hesitation was the answer. That half second before the thought completes, where something in you flinches. That is the most honest thing about you. More honest than anything you've said out loud. The hesitation, that's you. Every exit is the same door. Part 3, the escape. Let's talk about the exits. You know them all. The future self, the one who has fixed it, who wakes up without the weight. He's been coming for years. He's still not here. The afterlife, whatever shape yours takes, the place where the things you couldn't fix here are fixed by someone else. Maybe you've been banking on, maybe for a long time, the next version, the next city, the next relationship that won't have the same problems because you'll be different this time. These are not exits. They are the same room with the lights off. The eternal return doesn't close these doors, it just turns the lights on. The yes that costs everything. Part 4, the question. Nietzsche asked, what if a demon came to you in your loneliest night and told you that you will have to live this life, this exact life, again and again, forever? Not a better version, not a corrected version. This one, with everything in it that you would change if you could. Would that thought crush you? Would you curse the demon? Would you rage against it? Or would there be a moment, just a moment before the rage came, where something in you went quiet, where something in you thought once more? This is not a thought experiment. This is an X-ray. It shows you exactly which parts of your life you cannot say yes to. The parts you've been quietly renovating around. The parts you've been calling a phase, a mistake, a thing you'll deal with when the time is right. The time is always right. The demon is already here. The question has already been asked. You're answering it right now. Not with what you say to yourself at midnight. Not with the version of yourself you show to other people. With what you do when no one is watching. With what you reach for when it gets quiet enough to hear yourself think. With which version of yourself you choose when the choice costs something real. That is your answer. That has always been your answer. It is the only honest thing about you. And you already know what it is. You've known for a long time. You just kept the volume up. Joy wants the eternity of all things. Not the easy things. Not the beautiful things. All things. The specific weight of your failures. The exact shape of your cowardice. The particular face of the person you hurt and didn't reach in time. To say yes to one moment is to say yes to all of it. Nietzsche called this amor fati, love of fate, not acceptance, not endurance. Love. The difference matters. Acceptance says, I can live with this. Endurance says, I will survive this. Love says, I would choose this again. Most people get to acceptance. A few reach endurance. Love is a different country entirely. To love your fate means to love the version of yourself that made the choices you made. Not to forgive them, not to excuse them, to choose them again, knowing everything, eyes open. Can you? Most people, when they hear this question, start negotiating. They say, well, if I could just change that one thing, if I hadn't made that mistake, if I had been braver earlier. But the question isn't about a better version of your life. It's about this one. The cowardice included, the waste included. Every moment you looked away, included. That's not cruelty. That's the only question that tells the truth. Because the question doesn't ask whether your life was good. It asks whether you can love it. And loving something doesn't require it to be perfect. It requires you to choose it again, knowing everything, choosing it anyway. That is the weight. That is what Nietzsche meant. Not philosophy, not poetry. A choice you make every single day, whether you know it or not. You are making it right now, with how you're sitting, with what you're feeling, with whether you're still here or whether you've already looked away. The demon is still waiting, not outside you, in the part of you that already knows the answer and has been looking away from it for years. You don't have to answer now, but you're answering it every day whether you choose to or not. So answer it on purpose, not here, not to me, out there, where it costs something. No answer, just you.